Are the Boston Red Sox in trouble with their catching situation?
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby Maljanian, former ESPN social media associate and current host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I'm here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox Monday through Friday straight to your favorite podcast feed. And want to know the best part? It's all free. So make sure you tune in because Locked On is here for you every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. I'll talk to you all about FanDuel a little bit later on today's show, but happy Friday and happy Halloween. Most importantly, if you are going out trick-or-treating, enjoy that. Hope you have a really creative costume picked out. If you're tuning in, maybe you're bringing your kids out trick-or-treating, or maybe you're staying home watching the World Series and handing out candy like myself. Either way, whatever you are doing to spend your Halloween Friday evening, I hope it's absolutely glorious for you. And I'm here with another episode of Locked On Red Sox. And throughout the whole week, I have been breaking down different position groups on this Red Sox team. And I've talked about the infield, the outfield, the starting pitching, and the bullpen. What remains? The catchers. Now, the Red Sox were in a very unique situation at catcher because prior to 2025, a lot of people thought that the Red Sox were going to go out and make a move for a catcher in the offseason, a true proven catcher to pair with Connor Wong. And then when the Red Sox didn't do that and they added Carlos Narvaez, who ended up working out well for the Red Sox overall, but was only a rookie, then it sent this message to people that either the Red Sox really believe in Connor Wong to be that number one starting catcher and perform really well in that role, or that they trust Narvaez to pan out and grow into a guy who can be a number one starting catcher. Now, the Red Sox did get kind of lucky with Carlos Narvaez. When they acquired him, they knew that he had his strengths and his weaknesses, that he'd have some aspects of his game that he'd be able to provide to this Red Sox team in a positive manner, but he also had some aspects of his game in which he struggled. And early on in the season, the main thing that it was known to be a struggle of his was his offense. But early on in the season, he was hitting really well for this Red Sox team. He was hitting in big spots where there were runners on base, and he was creating and generating a lot of the Red Sox offense early on. And I was saying, wow, maybe the Red Sox hit the nail on the head with this guy. And then defensively, he did have some things that became increasingly frustrating over time, like the catcher's interference calls that he would always find himself on the wrong side of. And he kept racking up catcher's interference. And I said, man, if this guy can't figure out this catcher's interference thing, then this could be a long experience of him being in Boston. But despite that, he was pretty good behind the plate overall. He definitely has a plus arm and good receiving skills, but he has inconsistencies in his framing that were pretty noticeable in 2025. His fielding percentage was a .991 in 2025 with the Red Sox. So he really committed very few errors overall as a catcher throughout the course of the season. And in the Venezuelan Winter League, he had a caught stealing percentage of 1,000. So perfect. He also had a high fielding run value of 12 in his overall career, if you want to call it so far, even though he's still so young in his career. He made 234 catcher defensive plays in 2025 and executed 2 ground into double plays and 26 left on base. And a 991 fielding percentage across 2 seasons is very telling. It shows how effective he's been behind the plate overall. And that was a big thing that was noted by the Red Sox, because Connor Wong had his strengths and his weaknesses, but for Carlos Narvaez, the fact that he was able to have good receiving skills and a plus arm allowed him to make some very competitive plays. Now, on offense, after the first few months of the season and really after the All-Star break, Narvaez did start to struggle a little bit more at the plate. Overall, in the 2025 season, he had 403 at-bats over 446 plate appearances with 51 runs scored and 97 hits with 15 home runs, 1 stolen base, and then a 241 batting average, a 306 on-base percentage, a 419 slugging percentage, and a 725 OPS. So that 241 average is a lot, encompassing a drop in the second half of the season. In the first part of the season, he was hitting over 300 for a while. And then he slowly started to come back down to earth, and he ended at a 241 because he was starting to really struggle and just wasn't really seeing the ball well. In strikeout percentage, he's in just the 26th percentile, meaning he strikes out a lot more than the average player does. Walk percentage, he was decent. He was in the 51st percentile, so average. So he would take his walks, but wasn't leading the league in walks or anything like that. So he could use a little bit more patience at the plate, but it was the swing and miss stuff that was a problem, and he would go fishing. His chase percentage was in just the 39th percentile, so that's well below average, meaning that he would forcibly swing at pitches that were out of the strike zone. So he needs to work on the plate discipline a little bit more. And when you compare rookies, you look at a guy like Roman Anthony and where he was at in his rookie season in 2025. And obviously they're 2 very different types of players. So you can't really sit here and say it's an apples and oranges comparison. But the reason I'm bringing up Anthony is because he has that plate discipline. He's a player that is very difficult to strike out because he's very particular about what he swings at. He doesn't go chasing pitches well out of the zone a lot. He's disciplined and focused, and he swings at pitches that he should be swinging at and doesn't swing at pitches he shouldn't be swinging at. So it's difficult to find a rookie who has that skill. So just because Carlos Narvaez doesn't have that skill right now doesn't mean that he won't have it eventually. There's a reason that Roman Anthony was the top prospect in all of baseball before he got called up to the Red Sox. So I'm not ruling out Narvaez's ability to develop that plate discipline over time, but that's definitely something that he's going to need to continue to develop if he wants to be successful within the Red Sox organization. But even with a lot of his fielding stats, blocks above average, he's in the 88th percentile, framing 85th percentile, and pop time 80th percentile. So those are all stats that will keep his value high because he's overall effective behind the plate. His rookie mistakes hopefully will start to go away over the course of the 2026 season, especially with the catcher's interference. But overall, with the metrics, Narvaez was reliable behind the plate. Now, sprint speed, a different story. He's in just the 11th percentile. You don't always get speed from a catcher, and he falls into that category of he'll be able to provide value in other ways, but he's not going to be a guy who's really at risk to a pitcher of stealing bases, because that's just not a strong suit of his game. Average exit velocity, he was in the 75th percentile there. So he was hitting the ball pretty hard because it was traveling at a pretty fast rate when he was hitting it, which means he was making good hard contact when he was making contact. And that's really promising because that shows that hopefully as his bat starts to adapt to playing in the majors, and with the way that Fenway Park is set up, his batting style is really going to work well at Fenway as long as he continues to work on his mechanics and hopefully develops a little bit more sense of patience at the plate. But overall, I expect Narvaez to continue to take strides in year 2. Is he quite where he needs to be right now? Definitely not. But where do things stack up with him and Connor Wong going into next year? That's going to be talked about next. But it's good to be right and get paid for it. And you can do exactly that with Prize Picks. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action. Prize Picks is the simplest way to play if you haven't tried it yet. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. And it takes literally less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere that Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. The Red Sox are in an offseason right now that's very crucial. And by that, I mean, they need to truly go out and get serious about addressing the holes in the roster that they had in 2025. And one of those holes is arguably in the catching position. You have Carlos Narvaez, who the Red Sox were primarily using as their number 1 catcher, with Connor Wong serving as the backup. And then Wong experienced that hand injury during the season, so it elevated Narvaez's playing time, which hopefully is something that down the road pays dividends for him, the fact that he was able to get more reps in the way that he did when Connor Wong was down with an injury. Getting more reps is only good for a player. Obviously, assuming they avoid injury as well. We never want to see players get hurt. But if a player is getting the reps, they are assumedly going to continue to elevate their game. Because if they are seeing more live pitching at the major league level, then hopefully their hitting starts to adapt to that a little bit more. So that's what my hope is there. But Connor Wong has struggled with this Red Sox team over the last couple seasons. And in 2024, he had this surge where he was hitting really well. And everybody was hoping that was the version of Connor Wong we were going to continue to get. And spoiler alert, that didn't happen. He ended up struggling at the plate. And in 2025, I know he dealt with injury, but he struggled offensively. Over the course of the 2025 season, he had 168 at-bats over 188 plate appearances with 16 runs scored, 32 hits, no home runs, and 2 stolen bases. He had a 190 batting average, a 262 on-base percentage, 238 slugging, and 500 OPS. This was a huge, huge decrease from 2024, which was a leap from 2023. So in 2023, Connor Wong's average was a 235. That jumped up to a 280 in 2024 to then drop down to a 190 in 2025. So that's a significant decrease. His on-base percentage in 2023 was a 288. He got that all the way up to 333 in 2024, only to drop it down to 262 in 2025. Slugging percentage in 2023, 385. 2024, 425. Then in 2025, all the way down to a 238. OPS, same pattern. 673 OPS in 2023, jumping all the way up to a 758 in 2024, and then dropping down to 500 in 2025. So the common theme among that entire stat line that I just read is that he had a decent season in 2023 for a catcher, had a really good season in 2024, and then had a pretty abysmal season in 2025. So the question is going to be, what direction is Connor Wong trending in? Is he going to be the type of catcher that the Red Sox can truly rely on as the backup catcher moving forward? Now, keep in mind that backup catcher is what it is. Backup. Carlos Narvaez is going to get more of the appearances behind the plate. So he's the one who really needs to continue to take strides. Connor Wong is going to be the guy who's going to play in games in which Carlos Narvaez needs a rest, or particularly when Brayan Bello is pitching, also because Brayan Bello and Connor Wong established this chemistry with each other in 2025 that is really strong. So Brayan Bello is going to continue to want to have Wong catch for him. And that's another valuable thing that Connor Wong provides, is he's very, very good when it comes to working with the pitchers. He fixed Aroldis Chapman. He told him how he could fix his command issues. And then sure enough, Chapman went and had arguably potentially one of the best seasons of his career, if not the best, in 2025 with the Boston Red Sox, because he took Connor Wong's advice of 4 simple words and he ran with it. Aim small, miss small. And so that's the value that Connor Wong provides that we don't really get as much from Narvaez, is the pitchers seem to like being around Wong because he provides a lot of knowledge and wisdom that helps the pitchers to grow their game. And in that regard, the Red Sox might not necessarily want to lose that, and they might want to keep Wong around for that reason, because they would want to say, hey, you're really good with our pitchers. So even when you're not catching on a daily basis, it's beneficial for you to still be here to work with them. Defensively, his stats are very mixed. He does have some strong points, like a quick pop time and good range, but definitely needs to work on his blocking and framing. In 2023, he ranked 10th in Major League Baseball for starts at catcher and threw out 18 runners. His pop time to second base was also among the league's best, though his blocking and framing metrics were considered weak in 2024, ranking near the bottom of qualified catchers. So the framing has been something that's been an issue for him for a few years now, and it's not really something that he seemingly is fixing. His defensive stats over the course of the season in general: a -3 fielding run value, a -6 catching blocks above average, and a -2 CS above average. What exactly is CS above average? So that's basically a stat that measures a catcher's performance in preventing stolen bases compared to the league average. So essentially, it's the difference between the actual number of runners caught stealing and the expected number of caught stealing based on average catcher performance. So a positive number indicates a catcher who is better than average, while a negative number indicates a catcher who is below average. So it's calculated by subtracting the expected number of caught stealing from the actual number of caught stealing. And a catcher with a higher positive CS above average is more effective at throwing out base runners than the average catcher. For example, a catcher with a +4 CS above average has successfully caught 4 more runners than would be expected from an average catcher. The statistic can be converted into a catcher stealing runs value to show the impact in terms of runs saved or lost. It's very similar to caught stealing percentage, which is a simpler calculation of caught stealings divided by total stolen base attempts against that catcher. So essentially, moral of the story is that being in the negatives is not good. And with Connor Wong being in the negatives for nearly every major defensive category, that is just not a good sign. And it's definitely not a recipe for success. And the reason it was easy to justify having Connor Wong be such a big part of the Red Sox lineup in 2024 was because his offense was always very good that year. And so it was okay, or at least seen as okay, to kind of override the fact that his defense was a liability because they wanted his bat in the lineup. Now, the problem that we're facing is that his offense took a huge decline in 2025, and he's not as effective defensively. So now where are we at with him? It feels like he's a backup catcher that's a bit of a liability. And that's unfortunate because he's the only piece that remains in that Mookie Betts trade for the Red Sox. And I know they were hoping that things would pan out with him. But the issue now is yes, he only needs to be a backup catcher, but it's tough to feel like every time he's catching, it's an automatic out. In a World Series lineup, you don't really feel like you can pinpoint a certain player before the series starts and says that's an automatic out. Mookie Betts has been struggling in this World Series, but nobody would ever use Mookie Betts and automatic out in the same sentence. The issue with the Red Sox right now is that not only did that apply to Connor Wong, but they had multiple players in their lineup where you would look at them and say that's an automatic out. And that just cannot happen if they want to be a World Series contending team. So the question now becomes, are they in trouble with their catching situation? Because they're banking on Carlos Narvaez continuing to be able to elevate his game and perform at a really high level. And they also have Connor Wong, who isn't really providing a lot of upside right now with where he's at in his career. So it creates a hard decision for the Red Sox to make of, okay, do we just let it be with those two and it is what it is? Or do we try to acquire a stronger backup catcher this offseason and send Connor Wong down to AAA? In reality, at the end of the day, again, a backup catcher should not be their primary point of emphasis this offseason. And if they don't pick one up, it's not the end of the world. Connor Wong will do, and it will be fine. But if it's an area they can afford to improve, I'm definitely at least exploring what the catcher market could look like and what could be available out there. And coming up, who could be a fit from a catching standpoint for the Boston Red Sox. If you love sports betting, or if you're just interested now in getting into it, FanDuel is the perfect place for you, especially with NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, the NFL. All of those sports are in action now. College football, college basketball coming up. It's just such a great sports time of year. So this is the best time to get involved because you can win lots of money by making parlays involving lots of different sports. And it truly makes every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. FanDuel also has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comeback. So even if you don't make a bet before the game, that's okay. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Try to win lots of money, I'm telling you. And you know who has to spend money this offseason? The Boston Red Sox. They have multiple areas of this roster that they need to focus on improving. And whether they decide that upgrading the backup catcher role is necessary or not, it's definitely something to think about because of how much Connor Wong struggled over the course of the 2025 season. They also picked up Ali Sanchez late in the season. He really was not used much at all. He only had 23 at-bats in the 2025 season, and that was not just with the Red Sox. That was among a lot of different teams. And the Red Sox primarily picked him up late in the year so that they had more catching depth, but it kind of felt counterproductive having three catchers on the roster. So I don't necessarily see them doing that again because I think they realized that there wasn't really a point in doing that. But there are some notable catching free agents that the Red Sox could possibly consider looking into that could be an upgrade over Connor Wong. Because at this point, it's pretty obvious that the Red Sox see Narvi as the number one catcher and they see him continuing to grow and develop. But what happens beyond that? JT Realmuto is an unrestricted free agent. The only thing is he's approaching 35. So I don't know if the Red Sox want to make this big commitment to him. It would have to be a really team-friendly deal that's short-term. Then maybe they would consider it. Salvador Perez, also on the upside of his career, he has a club option. So not necessarily going to be available. Mitch Garver, another catcher on the market. There's a mutual option, though, between him and the Mariners. So it's likely that one side would probably want to exercise that, and then they'd get to talking, and he probably would end up staying. Christian Vazquez, our old friend, is a free agent as well. Not a bad idea. You know, what intrigues me about this one is that Christian Vazquez is a proven winner. he is a guy who the Red Sox always knew they could count on, that was going to be a good teammate and was going to be somebody who was always going to be there for everybody and helping to make everybody's game better. And even though he had his struggles, he was a sound catcher who could be relied on more often than not for the Red Sox. So a reunion could be intriguing, especially because he was pretty upset when he was traded away from the Boston Red Sox in the first place. So maybe coming back would bring him a lot of excitement. It depends on what his goals are at this point in his career, but he's a player who's familiar with Boston and understands what it's like to play there and what comes with it. And he's a proven winner also. So that's definitely a name to keep an eye on. Danny Jansen, another one of our old friends, mutual option between him and the Brewers for $12 million. And he is somebody who I would say, if the Red Sox decide to pick him up, I don't really see him being this major upgrade over Connor Wong to the point where it would make a ton of sense to be justifiable. So I'm not seeing that one happen. He really didn't hit well when he was in Boston last time. So the chances of the Red Sox being confident enough to give him another shot are probably pretty slim. So I'm thinking it's a no-go there. William Contreras also has an option with the Brewers, this time a club option. So they likely will exercise that, especially because that Brewers team made a deep playoff run this year. So they'll want to try to keep a lot of that team intact. So I see him sticking with them. Victor Caratini from the Houston Astros is an unrestricted free agent as well. That's an intriguing name. He's 32. He could be a guy who could provide value as a backup. Again, at this point, Carlos Narvaez is still the number one for the Red Sox, and that's what they picture. But if they want to get a more sound backup, he's not a bad choice. So keep an eye on that. Tom Murphy from the San Francisco Giants has a club option that they'll likely exercise because it's not that much money that he would be owed. That's a very team-friendly deal for them, so I doubt he'll become available. He'll probably end up just going back to San Francisco and staying there. Elias Diaz from the San Diego Padres has a mutual option for $7 million. I can't imagine that not being exercised. I mean, he's 35. So depending on what direction the Padres want to go in this offseason, that could be interesting as well. But he is still a name to keep in mind. Gary Sanchez, who is a catcher but also a DH, he's an unrestricted free agent. And with the Orioles and where they finished in 2025, that's a really intriguing team because that was a team that had high expectations and high hopes for 2025 after being a playoff team in 2024. And they just did not have that type of season at all, but there's still so much young talent there. So it'll be interesting to see what direction they think they need to go in 2026. Do they need to continue to pick up some young players so that they can complete a rebuild and focus on that? Or do you think they would want to keep somebody like Sanchez on the team because he's a veteran and they're trying to still be competitive right now? That's where that's going to have to be decided, as like, are the Orioles going to make a heavy push to bring him back or not? James McCann from the Arizona Diamondbacks, another unrestricted free agent. He's 35 as well. So that's another thing where if the Red Sox do want to sign one of these older veteran catchers, they can do that. Just keep in mind that we shouldn't be expecting heroism from any of them, because ultimately at the end of the day, like I said, it's just to be a backup. And if they want a backup catcher who can produce a little bit more offensively, that could help the Red Sox lineup to feel like it has a bit of a boost, because you want to get guys who are going to at least provide some value offensively, even if it's not consistent all the time. So if they do decide to make that move, that will be really telling of the fact that they don't think Connor Wong is it. And they want to at least get more value in that backup catcher spot. So there are options out there. There are guys who have had proven successful careers so far in Major League Baseball and might just be looking to play another year or two, and maybe the Red Sox wouldn't even need to commit that long. So if that's the case, it's definitely something to be open to. But again, just to reiterate, I'm not making backup catcher the most important thing that the Red Sox should do this offseason. So we'll have to see how that all plays out. But thank you so much for tuning into Locked On Red Sox and continuing to always make it your first listen of every single day. Be sure to next check out Locked On MLB Game Night every night after every single game until a World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Will the Dodgers force Game 7 tonight? Who knows? We'll see. But hopefully next year the Red Sox are in the World Series and we're having conversations about who's making the start in Game 6 of the World Series. That'd be ideal at this time next year. But in order for that to happen, you've just got to keep the faith. Go Red Sox. And I'll catch you on the flip side.